This week, my good friend Rick LePage and I are going to talk a little bit about taking your time with a scene to get the photo that you're really after. Well, hey, it's Hudson, and I got my good friend Rick LePage here. And we've been touring through Yellowstone and the Tetons. We're here in Grand Teton National Park. And I saw something the other day that just sort of struck me. We were at the Grand Prismatic Spring in Yellowstone. And, you know, it was one of those days, the light wasn't particularly great. It was really steaming. And the mist was blowing in, and you really couldn't get all the colors. I had this dream of getting those rainbow colors in the spring. You know, and I had a long lens, and I had a wide lens, and I'm hiking around. There's a boardwalk. It's my first time there. And there were quite a few people. And one of the things that we both, you know, as we started working the scene, found that was the coolest was actually just the silhouettes of people
walking along the boardwalk.
Through the boardwalk. And as I was photographing the people, I actually saw this one couple of photographers. There were so many photographers, and they're all walking by the spring. And the interesting thing is, you know, they're taking a snap, they're moving on. They're taking a snap, they're moving on. There were interesting ripples. There were interesting patterns on the ground out there. Now and then the mist would change and blow, and you'd be able to see some color.
Right.
And I saw this one couple. There was a man and a woman with cameras, and they were just staying in one spot, taking their time. And as I was filming and photographing, they weren't moving. And I took some video just because I thought it was exemplary. You know, you see people just take a snap, move, take a snap, move, take a snap, move. And all these people are flowing by with cameras, and this one couple's just working this spot that appealed to them. Something struck them. They connected with the scene a little bit, this whole thing approaching the scene. Yeah. And then they worked it for a while. You know, and I think it comes right back to Rick and I the other night. We were out photographing, and we stopped at, you know, the famous Ansel Adams Snake River overlook, which runs out towards the Grand, and I had this idea of a sun star. And it wasn't the greatest night for that. The atmospherics just weren't quite right. There was a really nice group of people out there. Great group of people we chatted with. And then we thought we'd take off and go photograph the Milky Way. Well, the clouds were sort of doing some interesting things, but it didn't look like it was going to be much.
Right.
And we got a little impatient. I like the scene, but we took off and we're driving, and then the clouds went absolutely insane. Yeah. I mean, I had a long lens out the window of the van as we're driving, trying to get to this Milky Way spot, taking, you know, shots of just the ridgeline. I had taken 500 millimeter shots of just the ridgeline with these clouds. And we're not in a place with any foreground. We're just on the highway through the sage. And I'm like, oh, we should have stayed and worked that scene longer. Yeah. And then, of course, you know, the clouds really bloomed and messed up the Milky Way. And it's one of those evenings. You know, the next day was exactly the opposite. We sat in a spot. We thought about leaving. And then the cloud, you know, we were patient with it, and we worked it for a while, and we wound up getting much better images at the old barn. We thought we were just going to be there for blue hour, and there were a whole lot of other people, and we had thought about a long lens scene of it with the mountains compressed and close up, and we'd scouted it the night before, and then suddenly there's 50 photographers in the scene. Yeah. And so we just moved up with them, and luckily we had the tall tripods, and we were able to get kind of up above them, and we stayed there for 2-3 hours?
Yeah, we were there for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. And so I think that, you know, if you really want to craft an image, I think most of the images that you look at and you think, wow, what a spectacular landscape photo, or, you know, that bear in that photograph is so amazing. Well, the photographer really probably spent a long time working to be in the right position, waiting for the light. Maybe came back. You know, Rick has this great thing that he does with places that he sees where the light's not quite right, or the wrong thing isn't quite.
You just tag it with the keyword revisit. Mm-hmm. And when you're thinking about going out and you want to try something else, go back to that place. You know, find those places that have that keyword and work it.
I think the keyword revisit is maybe the most powerful keyword that you can use these days.
Yeah, really.
I mean, you know, aside from tagging something so that you can find it looking back through. Revisit is a great keyword. And, you know, I just want to tell the neatest part of that whole story about the Grand Prismatic Spring is that as I walked out on the boardwalk and got to where everyone had been photographing, I was kind of waiting for breaks in the fog to get a little bit of color. And I came upon this couple who was sitting on a bench, And I know one of them was wearing red. I'm trying to remember. Maybe they both, but I think the husband was wearing red, and it just stood out against the backdrop of the Grand Prismatic Spring. And they were both looking through polarized glasses and talking about the colors. And they weren't photographing. Yeah. They have binoculars. They're wildlife lovers. And I could hear them just talking about the colors. Wow, look at that color. What would you call that color? And the polarizer makes such a big difference. And I thought they were so sweet, and just listening to, I didn't want to interrupt them, but I just took a photograph of them looking at the spring from behind. You can't tell who they are. And then when I got home and I was editing images, I thought, that may be one of my favorite photographs from the whole trip. And I thought, I really wish I connected with them and gotten their number. And lo and behold, the other night we were here for sunset here at Oxbow Bend in the Tetons. In the Tetons, 100 miles south of there. And I came down to almost this exact spot where we're filming right now. And I find that same couple sitting, and they have their binoculars, and they're watching an otter play out here in the ponds and talking about the otter. And I saw that they had, it was them. They had these kind of leather-based little binocular straps. And I said, I saw the two of you at the Grand Prismatic Spring 2 days ago. I said, you did. And it was this wonderful couple from Georgia. I got their email, and I can't wait to send their photo to them. So, all right. So I think, the moral of this whole lesson is about just taking your time. Yeah. Don't arrive 5 minutes before sunset, hop out with the tripod, and expect to get a great image.
And then drive away immediately.
We were down here last night, and the clouds went spectacular. It looked like, I have a photograph of the Grand Teton where it looks like it's just erupting with flames coming out of it and reflecting in the water. And it faded. And I said to a number of people around me, don't go. These things, this is a strange place. My good friend and mentor, Eva Momatuk, told me once, the Tetons are the only place in the United States that are like Patagonia, where the sunsets bounce and echo and the clouds just keep changing. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like it 1 minute, wait 10. Well, sure enough, it's just like what we were talking about. There were 100 people down here, and all of a sudden there were 3 of us, and then it just had this afterglow that came up, and amazing. So
it was delightful.
Take your time, Yep.
All
right. So hope that helps. Just thinking about connecting with your scene a little bit better and being patient with it. See you next week. Thanks, Rick.